everybody, and welcome back to another episode. I have such a treat for you guys today. I have Ace-Lynn McKenna, who is previously a luxury wedding photographer who is now turned intuitive business coach. And I'm really excited for our conversation today. But before we do that, I'm going to let Ace-Lynn tell you a little bit more about herself and what she does in her business. So Ace-Lynn, over to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited for this conversation and just so excited for us to get to chat about sales and mindset and what it means to be a better salesperson as an entrepreneur. But hi to everyone. My name is Aislinn. You can call me Ace. I was a luxury wedding photographer. I was in the wedding industry for about 14 years and then I retired. And over the past few years, I have been helping other women to really just be able to have more free time, to make more money, to enjoy their weekends, to enjoy their business by scaling their business and being able to charge more. So before I was a coach, I was in the luxury space. My last weddings were around 17K, and I was published in places like Brides, Martha Stewart, Southern Weddings, Betches, a couple other places. And it was really cool to have that transition. And I have so many clients who watched me transition into coaching, and they got to see there's so much more possible for you than just whatever you're doing right now. And in the past couple of years, I have scaled my coaching business to a multi six-figure business. And I help women who really want to deepen their self-trust. They want to scale their businesses and they want to become more magnetic versions of themselves. And truly, as much as I loved being in the wedding industry, there is something that just lights my soul on fire about helping other women create more freedom in their life. So I am so excited about this conversation because I know it's going to be so juicy.
Yay! I love that. I love that. And in my business, I have previously been coached on sales, and it has made the hugest difference in my confidence going into these conversations and being able to up my prices. And I still do work in the budget market, but transitioning, of course, I've made a great living for myself in the budget market. Can't complain, but I am looking to go to the next level, like most of us are. And this is just such a great conversation because sales can feel so icky, especially, well, I think especially as women, we have a lot of hangups about sales, just nature versus nurture. It's one of those things. And then also just as creatives being yes, I do enjoy doing this. It is art, but it costs this much. And it can just be a weird conversation. So I'm excited today to talk to you about sales. Just to kick things off, what's your sales philosophy?
Yeah, so this question is so interesting because it's not one that I've thought super hard about, but I will say for me, when I was a photographer, the biggest switch that I made that helped me make more sales and helped me be a better representative of my company was to think about myself as a business owner who happened to be a talented photographer. I am a business owner first. I am a CEO first. I have to take care of the business side of things, which means I need clients. In order to be a business owner, you need clients. So I didn't think of myself as an artist who had to sell their services. I thought of myself as a business owner who happened to be a talented artist who I was both at the same time. So when I think about sales philosophy, I think that is a really great distinction to make for yourself is if you are currently coming to the sales conversations as I'm an artist, please hire me, I'm starving. Of course, there's going to be desperate energy. People can read that kind of stuff versus if you're coming to it as I know my services and what I do is the exact solution to what this person across the table is looking for. And if it's not, then we are not a good fit. And that gets to be okay. That's a very different way to approach sales than how I think a lot of creatives have thought about it or even talked about it in the past.
Yeah. And I think you're so right when you say people can sense desperate energy. And, in my adult life, I have hired a lot of service providers to either do work on my house, do professional services for me. And if you sense that, oh, their pricing is flexible, of course, you're going to negotiate to get it lower. And I think that can be a hang up in the wedding industry, especially with photographers and videographers to be my pricing's not negotiable, but then you get into these conversations and you get insecure and then you start negotiating on your pricing and giving people stuff for free. And it's, I don't want to say that couples are vultures because they're not, but they're going to sense that and be oh, I can get stuff out of them. I can haggle their prices. They're not confident in what they're offering. which can also create doubt in your services as a whole, like you just said. And they're going to be like, I'm not going to pay you this high amount of money because like you're already backing off on it. So like, what is going on? I
Yeah.
think that's, yeah,
Well, I was gonna say, like, if somebody can sense your lack of boundaries is gonna benefit them, why would they not take advantage? This sounds terrible. Why would they not? Like, why would they not try to negotiate if they know that you're flexible and they know that you don't have boundaries around that? Versus somebody who's showing up to a sales call that says, my minimum investment is this. This is what we can do for you. That's a very different conversation than like, oh, it's, 4,000, but like, your wedding is not on a prime date, so maybe possibly we can work something out. Wink, wink. That's such a different vibe, and people like are going to be able to sense that. So just like kind of recognizing that this is actually like at its core like a mindset thing and like a boundary thing.
yeah. And I also think it's a confidence thing as well. I've talked to salespeople that I'm like, you're not confident, and it's not instilling a lot of trust in me that you're going to do a great job on the service, but I'm also definitely not going to pay you that price because it just doesn't sound like you're worth it. And yeah, for creatives, especially if you're looking to like take your business up into the next level, and we can talk about this too, like what are the levels within the wedding industry? Because it's not everybody knows. So we can definitely cover that next. But if you're looking to take your business to the next level, you have to show up confidently and like act like you belong there, act like you've been here before.
Yeah, that's actually a conversation I have with my clients sometimes, like where they'll be like, "Yeah, I showed up to my highest paying wedding ever and I felt like a like fish out of water." And I'm like, "Okay, that was your first time going to that kind of event. What did you learn? Next time, what are you going to normalize?" And I think that can really like help, like kind of almost getting into this practice mindset, and it can be in sales too. Like the first time you like say like, "Oh, my minimum investment is 81.90." The first time you say that out loud, it's probably going to feel like, oh my God, what do you mean? But after you practice and practice and practice, you're really building up that normalization for yourself. So if you're currently feeling like, okay, I want to up level and I want to like get to my next level, mindset and sales are really, really going to be a big factor in getting to that next level.
Yeah, yeah. So really quick, I do want to double back on the levels. And a lot of people who listen to this podcast are photographers and videographers. But there's also different people within the wedding industry who listen, and then people who are just creative entrepreneurs who don't work in the wedding industry at all. But I'd say majority is photography and videography. So really quick, correct me if I'm wrong. The brackets are like budget, lovely, or premium, and then luxury and ultra luxury. And from my understanding, budget is anywhere between the $0 to $5,000 range. The premium or luxury markets is like 5 to 10, or sorry, the premium and lovely market is like 5 to 10-ish. And then the luxury market is 10,000 up, and then ultra premium is like 20 to 30,000 up. Is that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so um, you can make whatever numbers you want to make. I think that there are a lot of different perspectives on what those numbers are and where those cutoffs are. I think that there comes some leadership in each of those like spaces. You're not going to see as much leadership skills like in the budget section, and that is not a bad thing, but that's just something to recognize. Once you start to get into premium, luxury, and like ultra luxury, that's where you're going to see like better sales skills. You're going to see more emotional intelligence. You're going to see more leadership skills. You're going to see more like mastery level. So if you are currently operating in quote unquote budget, there's nothing bad, broken, or wrong about operating in that space. But at a certain point, your skill set is no longer going to match like that price point or that space. And it'll kind of be like inevitable that you like enter into whatever that next space is. But yeah, I'd say like those brackets are pretty like pretty accurate. I will say I have not been in the wedding industry like for like 3 years. So when I was charging 17K, that was like back in like 2021, 2022. So like that would probably be ultra luxury at this point. And I think it's really important to just kind of recognize too that like inflation is a thing. So if somebody's like, oh, you're charging 5,000, your budget, well, 5,000 a couple of years ago was not $5,000. So just also kind of
Yeah.
keeping that in mind when you're thinking about these brackets.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. But yeah, I wanted to give a little bit of context when we're saying like leveling up. We're talking about like moving kind of from one bracket into the next, or just generally charging more in your business, doing better, creating more leadership, being more professional. Yeah, all those things like you were saying. So yeah, okay. Fun little aside with that. So let's get back to you mentioned something really interesting, and it was mindset. Like if you don't have the right mindset going into sales, it's people are going to pick up on it and they're going to know. So, what are like common roadblocks you see to people developing a healthy sales mindset? And then what would you say is the biggest like game changer in the mindset space?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of roadblocks around people thinking that selling is icky. I think like that's the like probably the number one like roadblock I see is like people are just like, "Oh, but I don't want to sell." And I'm like, "Do you want to be a business owner?" Like just like point blank period. Do you want to be a business owner? Because at some point to be a business owner, you have to sell. People aren't just going to hand you money and be like, "Please take this." Like you have to sell at some point. And there's so many different types of selling. Like I really love empowered selling where you come at it from like this like co-creation partnership space where like we are sitting at a table. You as like let's just say you're a couple like getting married, you as the couple need to decide that I am like a good fit for you and I as a service provider need to decide that you are a good fit for me. That to me is very empowered selling because I am not taking their power away. They are not giving their power away and vice versa. I'm not like giving my power away, all of those things to me, like that's my favorite form of selling. There's hard selling, there's like kind of gross selling, there's like, really like, like hard launch kind of selling. And I'm like, that's not for me, but it works for certain people. So I think there's also this kind of like thought process around like selling is just this one thing, and it can actually be so many different types of things. So when I think about the roadblocks to selling, I think a lot of it is just that people have like only seen certain types of selling modeled for them, and they're like, well, that's the thing. And then they try to fit themselves in that box and they're like, oh, this doesn't feel good. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it doesn't.
Yes, yes. And I think like this is something I had to go through as well. Maybe it was probably 2019 when I had my first like sales coaching session with a business coach. And she was basically like, you need to sell like you because you're trying to sell like someone else and it doesn't seem authentic. And I personally, like, I'm a little goofy. I'm pretty, like, to the point as well. And so, like, when I get my couples on the phone, I'm just like, tell me about your wedding. And then I'm like, okay, but like, and we're on the call today to talk about video services or photography services. So, like, let's just get right into that. Let's not beat around the bush and like draw this whole thing out. Like, your time is valuable. Let's talk about what you want and I'll give you the quote. Like that's how I sell now instead of this whole like, well, let me do this huge like onboarding checklist and ask all these questions and really beat around the bush to not appear too salesy and da da da. Like, no, they got on a call with me because they wanted me to sell to them. And I like
Yeah.
that was huge for me. Like the reason they contacted me was because they wanted my quote. They wanted to know what I would do for them. And like they literally were like, I'm getting on a sales call with you. You better sell me. Like that's couples know. They know you're going to sell to them. So don't make it a whole thing.
I think that's such a good point too. Like people like to be sold to. Like people love to buy. So like
Yeah.
why would it be any different with their wedding professional? And you're gonna make it super awkward for them if you're like, oh, I don't want to sell to you. I'm like, they're literally there to buy from you.
Yes. And if you get off the call and they don't have the information they wanted on the call, they're not going to book with you. If they don't know the
Mhm.
price that what they wanted is going to cost for you and they don't have assurance that you can do it for them and give them everything that they want, they're not going to book with you. It's like you have to do that on the call, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think like whoever's listening to this, like I also want you guys to recognize like who your ideal client is and how they buy and how you sell best. Like what's converted best for you when you did X, Y, and Z or when you did this over here. Like that kind of data is something that I personally as a business coach like really, really hone in on with my clients because if you're just like, oh, but it doesn't feel good. And I'm like, okay, cool. I can also see that in your data too. We're changing that versus, oh, I'm just having a bad day and it doesn't feel good to sell. That's a feeling, that's not a fact. And so I think it's important to recognize like who your clients are, but also what are the facts too.
Yeah, that's great. And I think going kind of along with this is like the marketing side of things. Like, who are you attracting into your business? And look, my marketing side is a mess right now. Like, I'm just like, I feel a little lost. Everything changed kind of during the pandemic, and I'm still trying to like catch up. Um, but who are you bringing into your business? And like, are you even getting the right people contacting you? I think is a big part of it. I know you do a little bit of sale or like marketing coaching as well on top of the sales stuff. Do you have anything to like any little tidbits of advice in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, do you want to clarify on like where specifically you're like struggling with marketing? I can probably give you
Yeah.
something.
So me in particular, it's definitely Instagram. And I feel like that's where I get a lot of leads. And when I say I get a lot of leads from Instagram, they might be coming from a referral, they might be on the website, but they're going to go to my Instagram, vet everything, then reach out usually. And I
Mhm.
just kind of feel like my Instagram's all over the place. Like it's such a mess. I actually just enrolled in the like educate, empower, and encourage like magic of luxury marketing mini e-course, which I think, do you have a module in that?
I have no idea. I haven't been in E3 in many years. I don't really know what they're doing anymore.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I saw your name on the thing, so I don't know if you have a module in it or if they're just pulling in information that like you've talked about with them. But I was like, oh, Ace-Lynn's in here somewhere. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
so yeah, it's very neat. So anyway, to me, it just does like I just feel a little lost. I'm like, do I be funny and goofy? Do I need to be extremely refined? Like, what are clients looking for? What content is performing better? What kind of captions are people resonating with? So, like, right now, I'm really just playing with it and doing a lot of testing. So, like, it's a mess. It's truly a mess.
Yeah, I mean, I heard this something recently that like really hit home for me is that like it is so incredibly exhausting to water yourself down. So if you're like, oh, should I be refined? But that's not you. No, like I wouldn't do that because it's not going to attract people that you're going to feel connected with. It's going to attract people that you feel like you should feel connected with. And that's a very, very different vibe of like co-creation and partnership. So for me, like when my clients are like asking about marketing, I have a mini course that just came out last month called Content Mastery, and it goes through like here's what to do as a wedding professional for your feed, here's what to do for your Instagram stories, and then here's
Mhm.
I have a training about brand story and unique value proposition. So I think like the very like core of marketing, you need to know what your brand story is. You need to know what your unique value proposition is. And then from there, reverse engineer how it's going to go into your stories, how it's going to go into your feed. But as far as like what you're like kind of working through right now, I think the important thing is to A, stay true to yourself, which is like the stupidest, cheesiest like type of like advice that I could give to you.
But it's so
But I
true. It's so true because
yeah,
everyone's telling you, do this, do this, do this, do this. If you do it like this, you're going to succeed. So, yeah, there's a lot of people telling you not to be true to yourself. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
no, you're good. But I want to say, like, I was charging a luxury price and doing really funny, like, skits and reels, like, several years ago. And that worked for me because people could feel, like, my energy through that. So if you're someone who's, like, funny, maybe that's some, like, a route to go. There is a fine line between, like, funny, though, and, like, just, like, not professional. So just, like, really, like, ride that line. But the thing I think I want to tell you with this is, like, you have to think about your Instagram as like a bingeable portfolio. So
Mhm.
you don't necessarily get people who come through it as the conduit of that's how they found you, but they're going to essentially background check you on your Instagram. So your energy, your presence, your message, your mission, your like unique value proposition, your brand story, all of that has got to live on your Instagram and they have to be able to immediately feel that from you. I see a lot of people in like the luxury market and they like start to get like further along, just stop like sharing who they are as a person. They're like, oh, I have to be mysterious or like I have to be refined or polished. And I'm like, you know what? There are people who will pay you at every single level. Like, of course, you need to be professional, but I don't think you need to be sterile. So I think there's definitely like a lot of fine lines, like with it when it comes to marketing. But I just really would come back to like who you are, what you do, who you serve, and how is that coming out in your messaging.
Yes, love that. Love that. Yeah, I definitely think I have some refining to do. So I might be signing up for that course. But anyway, okay, back to the main conversation. Um, And a question I had based off something you said earlier was people have to develop a mindset. How do you even go about developing a mindset? A lot of people think it's hard to change. People don't change, but people do change. And as a business owner, we're constantly changing and adapting. So, what tips or pieces of advice would you have for somebody who is like, they're stuck in a bad mindset and they have to snap themselves out of it?
Yeah, well, I would say first and foremost, like if you are stuck in a bad mindset and you have to snap yourself out of it, you're already coming from a place of you are in a hole and you have to dig yourself out versus my natural state, and I'm saying this as you, my natural state is neutral. My natural state is not like overtly positive and like the best, like most happiest person in the world. That's not my natural state. My natural state is neutral. My nervous system is neutral. My mindset is neutral. Things like can come in and they're just information. That's my natural state versus my quote unquote natural state is a bad mindset and I have to lift myself up to neutral. So I want you to think about like essentially like if you are currently stuck in a bad state or bad mindset, that is not your natural state. That is something maybe in your environment, maybe in like self-abandonment, maybe in the way that you're honoring yourself or not honoring yourself. Maybe it's the people you're surrounding yourself with. Maybe it's the career that you've chosen. Maybe it's the style that you're doing. There's so many things where you might not be doing things that are in alignment with what you actually truly want to do. That's probably where the bad mindset is coming from because that bad mindset is not the natural state. Neutral is the natural state. So if somebody was in that like place, that's the first thing that I would say to them. The second thing I would say to them is that you have to look at your input. If you are listening to like, people who are like telling you that like, oh, like, the wedding industry is like going downhill and like, the markets aren't great and blah, 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 blah. Those people are not necessarily feeding your soul. And those people are not necessarily like there to have a good time. Like they're just not. So I would like be really, really cognizant of like what the input you're having is on a daily basis, whether that's the people that you're surrounding yourself with, whether that's the podcasts you're listening to or social media that you have. And then I would also look at like just like what are you doing to take care of your base needs as a human. A lot of times like when my clients come to me and they're like, oh, I'm having a bad day. Unfortunately, what I will say to them is, have you had sunlight? Have you moved? And have you had water? And how was your sleep last night? I'll
Yeah.
ask those things first because body first. If your body is not having a good time, your mind is going to follow that. So as far as like mindset goes, I think that there's a lot of different ways to take it, but those would be kind of like the big things that I would be covering first before I got into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, definitely. And something to kind of go along with this is my business and sales coach, when I was like, I just need a little bit of help, I'm lost in 2019, so years ago, was she would always say, like, numbers are numbers, data is data. It doesn't matter the number of weddings you have booked this year. It doesn't matter how much money you're making this year in your business. It's just numbers. It doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean anything about like morally. It doesn't mean you're a failure or you're succeeding. You just need to look at the numbers. Like, do you have enough of number of dollars to pay your bills this month? If not, go get a job. Do you have enough numbers in the bank account to like do what you need to do to run your business? And so like taking the like I'm a failure side out of things, I think is really helpful, especially for people newer in the business. I think I don't know. There's this pressure to like go full time your first year and like make six figures. And people think it's easy because everyone's talking about it all the time. Not that many people are actually doing it. And so, like, just take the pressure off yourself. I don't know. If I had one piece of advice, this is not my wheelhouse, but if I had one piece of advice, it would just be like, hey, if you need money, go get a job. You can do this on the side until it's up and running. Like, it doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean you're a failure. You're doing great, sweetie. You just like just take care of yourself.
Yeah, and I'll give you like another little tip here is like watch your language. So like if you're saying things like I am X, Y, and Z, like so I am a whatever, you're assigning an identity versus I have had failures, or I have had successes, or I am having a success versus I am successful or I am whatever. Like, just be so incredibly mindful of what you are putting out there. Language is very often an indicator of what's going on, like subconsciously. Like, what is coming out of your mouth is very likely what's going on up here. So if you want to change what is going on up here, it's going to have to start with like what's going on in your actions and your words, which I think a lot of people just kind of like completely gloss over.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I'm successful this year versus my business is being successful this year. My business is going successfully. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
separating the business from yourself as like a person. You're not the same thing. You're a person over here, whether you have the business or not. You're still the same person. So like, yeah, I think that's so great. Like let's separate these things out a little bit here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so do you have anything else to add to that before we move on to some different questions? Okay.
No, I'm happy to keep moving on.
Okay, awesome. A next question I had here was, what sales tips do you have for wedding pros and creative entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been talking about this the whole time. So, like, obviously, like, get what you can out of like the first like half of this, like where we were talking about different tips. But
Yeah.
for me personally, like, I have a signature program. It's called Success Accelerator Program, and it's for wedding professionals who want to up level. And one of the trainings that we have in there is called, it's like consultation call something. I don't remember the name of it,
Hmm.
but it's all about consultation calls, and it's literally how I used to run my consultation calls step by step. I literally give my clients the verbiage, I give them the like all the tips and everything. But inside of that particular training, I talk about creating a roadmap. So a lot of people will go into a sales call with literally no idea what they're going to talk about. They have no idea. They're just like, okay, well, I hope they hire me. I hope they like me as a person. If they don't like me as a person, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Knock it off. Like, you are a CEO, you are a business owner, you have to sell. So when you're going into a meeting or into a consultation call, I want you to think about essentially like, how are you going to be the leader in this conversation? Because if you do not lead, someone else has to lead, which means that you are putting that onus on your client. That's not what we're here for. So for me, like, we had I wouldn't say it was like long, extensive calls, but they were like 45 minutes for consultation calls. And we would have like specific, like kind of like almost like roadmap, like markers along the way of what we were going to do together. And so at the very beginning of the call, and I give this language inside of my training itself, I would like basically walk my clients through what this call is going to be like and what we're going to be doing and what the end of the call is. So I tell them what the end is first, that they know, like if you're running a half marathon, you know that the end is at, mile 13. Like, I know the end is over here, so I need to make sure that I am taking them towards the end. So that's we essentially would walk them through like a little spiel at the very beginning. We'd be like, okay, like we're gonna start out and do this, blah blah blah, and at the very end, I'm gonna let you know your next steps, and you'll be able to sign your contract and pay your deposit after you pick whatever like option that we choose like together. So like, that is a very different thing than coming into a call and being like, oh my God, you're engaged, yay! What do you want to talk about? Like,
Yes.
it's just, that's not good sales skills.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, like if you're not in control, they're going to be in control. And a client being in control is not, I don't want to say it's not a good thing, but it doesn't make them feel confident and comfortable that you can handle their wedding.
Yes. Yeah, this is essentially like one of their very first experiences with you to see what your process is like. And I tell my clients all the time, your process as a client experience is not 30,000-foot view from inquiry to like delivery of whatever, let's just say it's a gallery. Your process is made up of 100 different tiny processes. The very first process that they have to go through is your inquiry process. So that's their very first impression of you. The second one is the consultation call. The third one is onboarding, blah, 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 blah. Like, if you think about like, okay, I need to refine each one of those itty bitty processes, it's going to feel so much better for your client because they're just going to keep having these like dopamine hits essentially of like, oh, this process makes me feel so taken care of. I feel so seen. And they don't know why, but you know why because your process is really good.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. And it's so true. Like you have one chance to make a first impression, so don't blow it. Like your website needs to be up to par, your onboarding process needs to be up to par. Like you have to get people in and make them feel really good, take care of them throughout the whole process. And then I think offboarding is tricky in the wedding industry because like a lot of times we may or may not ever work with them again. Like they're probably going to get married once. If you're a photographer, you might do their family sessions down the line, but like a videographer, you're very likely never going to see them again. So like how can you offboard them in a way that doesn't make them feel abandoned is huge. And yeah, there's so much that goes into that. I mean, that could be a whole other podcast.
I have a lot of thoughts about it.
Yes, I am sure. Um, yeah, yeah. So to recap, I would say like if you're not feeling confident in your sales process, figure out why, figure out what's going on, figure out how you want to sell, and like is your ideal client going to resonate with your personality? If not, you may want to change your messaging so you're bringing in the right people. Um, be confident when you get on these calls. Like you're in control, you're the business owner, and then like do the right thing, be honest, be genuine, sell to them with integrity and confidence. And I mean, the rest honestly should roll from there. If they have the budget for you, they're going to hire you. If they don't have the budget for you, maybe you're going to convince them to make the budget for you. Maybe not. That's okay. And then, yeah. And then we go into the whole other side of the process of like taking care of them the whole time.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Like that's a whole separate thing. Like don't just make like the inquiry and consultation call like experience the best part of the process, like make the whole thing really good.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Because, and I've heard from lots of different coaches, different opinions about giving people a great experience, but everyone kind of seems to agree that the way you leave somebody is going to have the most impact. So the way that you offboard them, the way you're delivering their like deliverables and stuff, they're going to remember that more so than the onboarding because it was so long ago. They've gone through this whole experience. So like offboarding is very important in my opinion. And that's where you're going to get the reviews and you're going to get people raving about you and talking about you and referring you to their friends and, keeping your business going basically. So yeah, again, that's a whole other podcast. I'll have to have you back and we'll have to talk
Yes,
about all
please.
of that.
I would love that.
um,
I have a lot of thoughts. We had a lot of really cool offboarding like processes like as we like went through my career.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And I love like I'm a gifts person. I love to like send gifts. I love to get gifts. And everything like that. So like I love to like sneak a gift in any way I can, whatever it is. Like if it's your favorite snack, I'm gonna have it with me on the wedding day. Do you want like a little treat at the end? I'm gonna mail it to you. Like yeah, I love a little gift. So anyway, back to our like closing everything out. You've mentioned a few times you have so many courses, so many resources. Can you tell us what courses and offerings you have right now, and then where can we find them?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, like, come find me on Instagram at Aislinn Coaching. If you find Aislinn, that is my old wedding account. I'm not active on there, so please come find me at Aislinn Coaching on Instagram. That's where I live, breathe, like dance on Instagram, all the things. Like that's the place that you will find me. Like that's also where I sell the most. So you'll kind of get a better understanding of like what like I'm offering at the time. So I actually don't have a ton of different courses. I have two signature spaces. So I have the signature space of Success Accelerator program, which is meant for wedding professionals who really want to up-level their sales, their mindset. They really want to optimize their business, like their processes and their workflows. So it's a 6-month commitment with the option to re-sign. And I have most of my clients re-sign because it's such a great space. But it's kind of this like hybrid of you get the SAP framework of all the different trainings and resources, but you also get Slack access Monday through Friday in a group. And then we have bi-weekly coaching calls and there's a one-on-one onboarding call. So it's this like hybrid of like, really high level, high touch, like mentorship and also all the resources you could possibly need to up level. So we've had clients who they've come to me, they're charging 6,000. In a couple of months, they're charging 10,000 and they feel very confident in that. We've had clients who have had $25,000 sales months. We've had clients who have had $67,000 quarters. It is an amazing space and I love it so much because the growth in there is absolutely insane. And I have just like so much respect for the clients who are in there because of what they're creating and how much change that they're willing to go through. So that's my signature spot is SAP. And then I also have a mastermind. It's called Creative Cash Flow Mastermind. And that is meant for the creative who is starting to do things like education, or you're starting to do like corporate, or you're starting to basically scale beyond the wedding industry and like really step into that like CEO baddie like vibe and era for yourself. So we have clients who are really doing a lot of really big things over there, and they might still be in the wedding industry, but the wedding industry is not their only business that they're running. So those are my two primary spaces. And then I have a free masterclass that I think everyone who's listening to this will get a lot out of. It's called The Profitable Photographer. It's completely free. And basically it helps you look at the different gaps in your business to see whether or not you have a mindset gap, whether you have a marketing gap, a sales gap, or a pricing gap. And it helps you to identify those things so that you know what to actually focus on to level up your business. And that just came out like literally last week. So it's brand new. You can find it on my Instagram, and I'm sure I'll have like show notes as well. And then of course, like if you want to work with me one-on-one, I have one-on-one spaces as well. But those are kind of the primary ways that you can work with me. I really do love to help people with their mindset, but I also really love helping people with like the scaling side of business, because that has been just, it's so cool to like have clients come to me at a certain price point, and by like couple months later, they've like tripled their prices or like doubled their prices. Like that is, there's something really magical about that.
Yes, that is so great. I love that. And I love that you have this free place for people to work with you. So one, they can get to know you and realize like, okay, this is the environment that I need to like pay somebody to coach me in. So they're not just like spinning their wheels, taking in all this information, but it actually wasn't what their problem was. That I think is very special and very unique. Not a lot of educators offer that. So I love that you do that. But yes, everything will be linked in the show notes, your Instagram and your website. So if you're looking for coaching, you're looking for education, definitely check out the show notes, get in touch with Ace. She's going to help you level up your business. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on today. This was such a great conversation. I hope if you're listening that you feel like uplifted and like, oh my gosh, I actually can take control and have confidence in my sales process. It doesn't have to be this icky thing. It can be something that is genuinely me and a way for me to connect to my clients.
Absolutely. And I just want to say thank you so much for having me. This was an amazing conversation, and I can't wait to see what the takeaways are from this particular episode.
Yes, please let us know in the comments, like, what have you been inspired to do today? What is the action step you're going to take? We would love to know.